Hi, everybody. I'm Gabe Belanger, and this event is going to talk to you about how you can make sure your company email still sends to people with maybe a Gmail account or a Yahoo account. So, how do you keep your company email from to continue to go to these people's inboxes? So that's what I wanted to cover today. So, the big changes to Google and Yahoo email are going to make this important. So they're increasing the security. They've started this as of February 1st. So you want to make sure your company email gets to their inbox. That's what the whole talk is about here, and it's pretty important. Recently, I sent an email to somebody. It was a sales proposal. They hadn't gotten it, and it was a week or two behind, and they forgot what it was all about. So it took a little bit of time to get that rectified. So let's start right now. So the biggest thing to say is kind of what is Google telling us, right? So what they're telling us is that starting February 1st, they're going to set up better security, and it's mostly about verifying that you are who you say you are when you're sending an email. So wouldn't it be bad if someone sent an email with your email address called spoofing to someone, a client, or anybody in Gmail or Yahoo's email, and they didn't know and they responded and reacted to it. So that's what this is about. It's about making sure that you prove you are who you say you are before Gmail is going to put it in the inbox. So how are they going to do this starting February 1st? I mean, that's not the only way they're doing it, but that's the way I want to highlight. So the way that they're going to do this is to set up an SPF or DKIM email authentication on your domain. So when we say your domain, for my domain, it's mycgoc.com. For my company, Computer Geeks on Call. So they want you to set up this kind of special authentication. You might even have the SPF already working. So the other thing is that they want to ensure that the sending domain, where you're sending it from, is really the email server for the company. So again, I'm Computer Geeks on Call. My domain is mycgoc.com. Is the email actually coming from an email server, mycgoc.com, that I've authorized to send email on my behalf? Because it's actually not that difficult to spoof email, to send email pretending to be someone else. Now you can see there's other things I'm not going to talk about, other ways that they're improving the security to get your email in their inboxes, both of Gmail or Yahoo Mail. So let's just focus on the top two I've marked in red, which are a little bit more complicated and they actually work very well. I think the other items you can probably figure out and take care of yourself and probably won't be too much of an issue. So so how does sending email work? And this is going to be a very basic explanation. The reason why I want to bring up how, email sending works is because this will explain fully what they're trying to do and how it works so you can understand it and set it up and make sure your company's email is protected. It's still getting to people with Gmail. So when you send someone email, let's say it's Gabe at mycgoc.com. It checks mycgoc.com's records to see where the email server is. So when you're sending out an email, the first thing that happens is your software and your system, the internet, it looks at mycgoc.com and it says, well, where's the email server? Oh, it's here. I'm going to send it there. So again, you're sending it. It checks the records of mycgoc.com and it sends the message to the email server you've defined for mycgoc.com. Then your email software sends the message to the email server. So that's how we send email, very basic, right? So how do we receive email? Your email server is waiting to receive messages from a sender. So for added security, your email server could check the records of the sender to make sure they are who they say they are before your email server accepts the email. If your email server doesn't like it, they can just block the email. It doesn't even get to your email server. It's just blocked. And you'll get a bounce back message. Or they can put it and mark it as spam. And you know how it is with spam. You may not always see your spam right away, or you may not even notice it for weeks or even months. It all depends on how often you're checking your junk mail and stuff. So that's how receiving the email works. There's a little bit of a process. Your email server can check records of the sender before they decide to accept the email. Obviously, the reason for this is spammers are sending email from all over the place, and the people are impersonating other people with their domain name. So Gabe at mycgoc.com is my domain name. There's a possibility someone could send an email pretending to be me, asking you to pay an invoice or something like that, right? So, what are my email records? So, your email records are part of your DNS records. It tells the internet where to email you, where your website is, and who you are when you send emails out. Those are your email records, your DNS records. They're part of your DNS records. So, you can think of DNS records as your name and phone number in the phone book. Without the phone number, nobody could call you. So, if you went and looked in the phone book and you saw my name and there was no phone number, it's kind of useless. Those DNS records populate the specific information we need to function in tech. So you can think of the DNS record as not just your name, but the actual phone number in the phone book. Okay. Hopefully you know what I mean by a phone book, and this makes a lot of sense to you. Uh, Nowadays phone books not used too much. So Gmail and Yahoo Mail are asking you to provide more records, more information when sending out email, or their email servers may reject your email or mark it as spam. So their email server is saying, "Oh, okay, it's coming from your company email. Let me look at your records to make sure it's really coming from you." And if you don't have it set up the way we want, we might just reject it, or we might mark it as spam. So it never actually goes to the user. So the user is not aware of this. The user doesn't even know you sent the email. It's possible it gets marked as spam and blocked, and they'll never see it, or they might notice it days or weeks later, or even months or years, depending on them, right? So this is the whole concept. So let's keep your email flowing. So your DNS records that we're going to focus on, part of the changes they want is the PTR record and the SPF or DKIM authentication. These are ways of proving that you sending the email are actually authorized to send the email. So you could send your email from an email server, which is the normal way. You might have Microsoft 365, you might have Google Workspace, whatever it is. That's how you're sending your email out, and you can put these DNS records to prove, yeah, it's me sending from my email server that I've authorized. It's all good. Since you're the one putting in your DNS records, you're authorizing it and saying it's good. Um, so the PTR record and the SPF or DKIM are two ways to prove your email is coming from you, the true source. So it can't be impersonated. It can't be a spammer somewhere else pretending to send email from you. So it's a really good security measure. Um, the other thing to mention of importance, a partner of yours that sends emails on your behalf, example, Constant Contact, needs to be part of this as well. So if you're sending email from your Microsoft 365 email server, fine, it works. You put in these records and everything is good. But oh, you forgot, you also send email out through Constant Contact. You need to include them in your DNS records so that when Gmail checks, they can see the records are coming. Your email might be coming from your email server, and it might also be coming from Constant Contact, which you also use to send email out. Okay, so let's keep the email flowing with these two records. So the PTR record, you're sending IP address, that's your identification of your email server on the internet. We all have this as connected devices. It must have a PTR record. The PTR record verifies that the sending host name is associated with the sending IP address. In other words, my email server's IP address is 123, and my host name is ABC, and that record is going to prove it. So when Gmail says, "Oh well, you say you're sending from mycgoc.com, which is my domain. Let me go back and look at your PTR record. And if it's there and it verifies the IP address correctly, then we're good." So we need to set up a valid reverse DNS record of your sending server's IP address that point to your domain. So that the same thing. Your email server has an IP address going to be tied to mycgoc.com in my case. And that's a way that Gmail can verify, yeah, it came from that actual domain. So what does it do? Well, it can check the email message header. In your email, there's a thing called the headers. And in the message, you can actually see, in this case, the IP address. I just pulled this off of an image. You can see that there's an IP address here of the sender of the email. So it can pull that IP address. So we can see that, Gmail can see that, and now they're saying, well, you better have a record in your DNS to show that that IP address matches your email server, so we know it's really you trying to send this email. And if not, well, they may just reject that message. So someone outside trying to send email pretending to be you, it won't happen, right? So the SPF record, it's another type of record. It prevents spammers from sending unauthorized messages that appear to be from your domain. They're set up by SPF by publishing an SPF record on your domain. It should, again, it's a similar to the PTR record. It's just a little more general. So what do we do with the SPF record? Well, we go to our email provider. So in this case here, Gmail provides the SPF record. You simply add it to your DNS as a text record. And I should mention too, in the what I was just talking about, that the PTR record, it's a record that you add to your DNS. So we're talking about adding records to your to your DNS. So when Gmail is looking you up and like, oh, you're sending me a message, well, let me look at your DNS records to see who you are. The PTR record's going to be there. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. I'm bringing this up just because it's a little bit more complicated than the other requirements they have. So the PTR record would need to be added to the DNS. It just verifies your email server IP address is what it's supposed to be. The SPF record is similar. It's a text record. So if your email server is Google Workspace, they will provide you the text record for your SPF. You just copy it from them and you add it as a text record to your DNS. And my second point here, if you send an email from your constant contact, for example, um, your website form or other things, anything else outside of your normal email server, you have to also include this in your SPF record. And if you look on the examples here, the very top one, it authorizes email senders for your domain, any server with the IP address of so and so, and Google Workspace. So you see, this text does both. So the way we do it is with this include function. So you would get, for example, the SPF record for Google, plus you would want to include, for example, constant contact, and they'll give you the information. So all of these are SPF records with more than one way that email might be sent out. So that Gmail can check and say, oh, we got it from constant contact, it's in their SPF record. They send from constant contact, that's fine. Oh, we got it from their email server. It's in their SPF record. That's the proper email server. That's fine. So this is the whole concept of the SPF record. Again, it's a record you're putting on your DNS to prove. Now, the DKIM digital signature is a little bit more complicated, but generally it's the same idea. There's more steps involved. So the DKIM is a standard email authentication method that adds a digital signature to outgoing messages. Receiving mail servers that get messages signed with DKIM can verify messages actually came from the sender and not someone impersonating the sender. DKIM also checks to make sure message contents aren't changed after the message has been sent. So it provides integrity of the information as well. So DKIM, what do we do with DKIM? Well, you get your DKIM key in your email server's admin console. So if you have Microsoft 365, you would go and locate your DKIM key. Then you would add your DKIM key to your DNS records. And just below here, I'm showing an example of adding in a DNS host name as a text record and then putting in the DKIM key as a text record value as well. So once you've added your DNS records, you then enable DKIM in your email server's admin console. So if you have Microsoft 365, you enable DKIM. When it's enabled, now your email server is using this to digitally sign and verify that the messages going out from you are actually your emails from you, and it can be trusted. So this is a recognized standard, and the beauty of it is that people can easily turn these things on. When we set up email security for clients, we have the option to require DKIM from any email that we receive. So obviously, I would say probably 99, 95% of people don't use DKIM. It's not really well established. So if you were to only accept emails from people with DKIM, then you're not going to get a lot of email. A lot is going to be rejected. But if you do set up DKIM, you're protecting yourself and you're proving to people that you actually have, quality email security. So, uh, let's get on to our next slide here. So how do we do all this then? How do we actually do it? I kind of gave you a broad overview. So I want to make a major warning. DNS records are very sensitive and unforgiving. If you make a mistake, your website or email could go offline. Once you correct that mistake with your DNS records, it could take up to 48 hours to start working again. That's how long it takes for the DNS in the world to propagate and know, who your email server is, or things like that. I This warning is not just a fluff warning. I've had many people go in and create all kinds of issues by trying to change or work with support of some of these DNS hosts, and then they mess up their system, and then they when they tell us about it, we go and we correct it, and there's still a little bit of downtime before it gets propagated and working again. So be really careful before you consider doing any of this stuff, or hire a technician, right? Okay, so how do you do it then? So I'm going to go through this, and we're just talking again about the SPF, the PTR, and the DKIM, right? So these are the biggest things that you can do that are maybe the most complicated, but the most solid to help qualify and make sure your company email still gets to Gmail and Yahoo email users. So the first thing is to identify all email systems that send email coming from your company domain name. So in my case, I have it from website form. I have constant contact. Of course, I have my email server. So you want to make a list of all the email systems that send out email coming from your company domain name. Next, log into your DNS registrar and locate where your DNS records are. A lot of people will have trouble with the first two. So if you do, you're probably better to just get a technician to help you. Um, Log into your email server admin console. If your email server is Microsoft 365 or Gmail, just log in there. Okay. You have to be the admin. In your email server admin console, locate your SPF record, the IP address of your email server, and your DKIM key. Okay, once you've found all those, you would then move to add this SPF record from step 4. Remember, we were in our email server admin console, and we found those records. So add this SPF record from step 4 to your DNS records. So just add the SPF record. If you need to include other things like constant contact, etc., you'll have to make it a little bit more complicated. It'll have to have include in it. So there's a lot more study involved to make sure you do it right. If these records are wrong, it's just not going to work. There's no kindness to DNS records. Add a reverse lookup PTR record indicating your IP address. Again, from step 4, where you looked it up on your email server admin console. So you add the reverse PTR record indicating your IP address and your domain name to your DNS records. Again, these are changes on your DNS record. And then number 7, add the DKIM text and encryption key records. Again, you looked this up in step 4 to your DNS records, and then enable DKIM encryption on your email server. So there's a lot of steps involved in there. Now, as you go through here, it's important to say that the your DNS records are really not necessarily set up by modern companies that have all features and functions, and some of them are really pretty easy to manage, some are easy to get support from, and some are difficult, some are old, some don't really have good support. So it all really depends a lot on your DNS. So you might hit roadblocks all the way through. My suggestion there is to use the support of your DNS, whatever that is. Some of them may take a few minutes to get back. Some may take a few hours or even longer. But get support from them. Tell them what you're trying to do. But if you're not really sure you're doing the right thing or it's going to work, don't do it. If you change your DNS records incorrectly, your email flow could stop. Your website could stop. And then it's really hard to track back and figure out how to, rectify it from there. So now it turns into an emergency tech support issue, and the person coming in to fix it, they're going to have to backtrack and figure out all of how it's supposed to be set up. So the last step I have here was to verify all looks good and works as expected thoroughly. So the way that I've done this over the years is if I've made DNS record changes and I want to check, then I would go to my regular email, and I would send an email to a personal email address that I have, and I would check to see, if it arrived and if I can reply back. And I would do that a couple times. Now, once you've made these record changes, it does take a little bit of time to propagate. And I just did this yesterday, and it took about 15 minutes for these DNS records to update. But just because it updates for part of the people on the internet, it could take the full 2 days for these DNS records to be propagated everywhere on all the DNS servers on the internet. So what that means is, if you update DNS records and you test it in 15 minutes and it works for you, somebody else using a different DNS server, everyone uses it who's on the internet, right? That DNS server might not be updated. It might not work for them for another 2 days, possibly up to 2 days. But generally speaking, about 1 or 2 hours does most DNS record propagation, and then maybe a few hours after. But some could take up to 2 days to get the DNS records in there properly. So once again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to help you as a company make sure that your company email continues to go to Gmail and Yahoo email providers. So I've looked at the general security changes that they've started as of February 1st, and I zoned in on two of the key ones, two of the ones that are more difficult and more effective in making sure that you're high up in the list of accepted senders to Gmail and Yahoo Mail. And there's a lot more I can go into on this. But again, don't change your DNS records if you feel that you're not really comfortable with it. If you're not sure about it, I would not do it. I would get a technician to help you. If you have trouble doing this yourself, you have questions, feel free to comment in here, and I'll try to respond back and give you whatever guidance I can. But it is really important to remember that with the DNS records, um, there's no room for error. If you type it in wrong, you're making that change and it starts propagating out to all the DNS servers on the internet. If you have to fix it, well, you can fix it, but now you have to, let's say you make the mistake an hour later, you go to fix it. Now you're putting out those records again, and some of them have the new information, some of them don't. So it really does cause disruption. So you're better to be sure about what you're doing before you do it. And once you're comfortable doing it, you could give it a try, but be ready to face the consequences. I don't really recommend it if you haven't done it before. That's one thing I can say. So feel free to ask us if you're having any trouble in the comments on any of the channels you're seeing this on. And you can also contact me on my website. We have chat there. Our website is mycgoc.com. And it looks like that's it for now. So I don't really see anybody asking any questions. But please do comment here, and I'll try to add a little bit better resources in the description of the videos. But thank you for your time. Okay, take care.